and welcome back to another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2. And my guest today joins me from a much warmer and sunnier place than I am at. But this is Clint Russell, the Liberty Lockdown guy. Clint, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John. Yes, I am the Liberty Lockdown guy. I'm also
Yeah.
a co-host of Tower Gang, and just all around Liberty ranter, entrepreneur. Yeah, that's me.
Yep. Yeah. So, and as a fellow podcaster, for those are a fan of podcasts, check out Liberty Lockdown. Stumbled across this podcast. I want to say last summer while I was on a road trip, I think. So, yeah, but very good conversations, very insightful. If you need something to burn the hours behind a windshield, it's definitely worth a listen.
Yeah,
So,
and if you want to get really, really angry at the government, definitely check me out.
I don't need help with that. So, maybe I don't need to listen anymore.
True, true.
So, all right. Well, anyways, Clint, thanks again for joining my listeners with the show. But maybe outside of the Liberty lockdown, can you take us back in time? What was your previous W-2 job? What did you do? What was your average day like in that job?
Yeah, I think the last time I was a W-2 employee was like '04, '05. So
Okay.
very long time ago. I worked for Verizon Wireless as
Oh,
a
okay, gotcha.
cell phone salesman, and was I burnt out after a year, but I was briefly a top 10 sales rep in the country for Verizon, so
Oh,
that was
wow.
pretty cool. Yeah, I was in Carlsbad, and I enjoyed the job, but the corporate environment just didn't suit me, and
Yeah.
having constantly increasing quotas, even though I was like crushing it, and having my pay get cut even though I was
Uh-huh.
exceeding my previous impossible feats. It was just
Yeah.
like, oh well, this is clearly not set up for me to prevail.
So yeah, you're preaching to the choir. My previous W-2 job was in office equipment sales, and I still remember one of many moments that made me want to leave, where my territory shrunk, but my quota got bigger. I was like, this doesn't make sense. It should be the other way around.
Yep, that's how they do it, man.
So now, whether it was Verizon, or I know your story is a little bit more interesting, where you left, I believe, California, then moved to Florida. But what
Mhm.
was your, maybe, if there was one moment or maybe a series of moments when you decided, this wasn't for me. There's got to be something else out there. Entrepreneurship, podcasting, etc.
Well, the move to Miami happened not even 2 years ago. So
Okay,
my decision to become an entrepreneur was 15 years prior to that, even. So
gotcha.
I basically I quit working for Verizon. I decided to go back and finish college because I had dropped out after 2 years,
Okay.
and then went back, got my bachelor's in business management, even though I didn't need it. But I was just kind of like young kid trying to figure out his way in the world,
Sure.
uh, and became even more convinced that I was not set up or built to be an employee. I'm just too, I don't know. I demand autonomy, and you just
Yep.
you just you just can't get that working with other people, unfortunately.
Sure.
Um, but because of the '08 '09 real estate collapse, I was graduating college into that, and obviously the work environment wasn't very healthy. But also my dad, who ran a mortgage company, was dealing with just an avalanche of foreclosures,
Mm,
because he was a private money lender. So he had all of these properties that he had to now liquidate. And
gotcha.
because I was a young, go getter at the time, I was like, all right, I'll step in and help you for a couple of years. And it was
Okay.
absolutely brutal. It was absolutely brutal. But I don't even know if I don't think I was W-2'd. I think I was like 1099.
Sure.
I can't really remember, to be honest, but he didn't pay me very well. And because that's just how family treats family, I guess.
Yeah.
But I did a really good job for him. I liquidated over 100 foreclosed properties.
Wow.
I cut as much of the losses as I possibly could for his investor group. And by the time the market had started to rebound a little bit, I realized like working for family was creating some of the same dynamics that I hated about working for other people. So
Mm,
I created my own mortgage company to compete with my dad.
okay.
I mean, not really directly compete, but I just like I now had the expertise to go out and do it on my own. I had relationships with many of his same investors, and sure enough, as soon as I did that, about a year later, my dad decided he was going to close down his company, become a an investor. Just continue to invest in trust deeds through me,
Oh,
and
gotcha.
so he and I, went from pretty antagonistic relationship briefly to back to working together to some extent. So yeah, and then we're still on great terms today.
Oh, very good to hear. So now the obviously you're looking at a kind of a 20-year journey, and I'm gonna take a little different track for questions I ask my guests, but you're kind of had a multi-level step where you left the W-2 job, then worked for family, then started your own mortgage company. But then the last step, and I think this kind of obviously tied into COVID, where I believe you left California, just
Yeah,
packed up, went to Miami. What was that process like, or what was the reasoning, making that shift of moving from coast to coast?
yeah. Well, for those that are unfamiliar with California, they treated us very, very poorly during the COVID
Yeah.
era.
Unless you're
And
Gavin Newsom, you can do whatever you want. But yeah,
well,
that's another
sure, of
discussion.
course. I mean, the king can always do what he wants, but
Oh yeah, the rules for
uh,
thee, but not for me.
yeah. So that alone would have been enough to get me out of there. But in truth, it was because I was a fiduciary to my investors, and I no longer had any real grasp of what the economic fallout would be from the absolutely insane lockdown decision.
Hmm.
And as a fiduciary, like I couldn't in good conscience continue to invest their capital. So I decided
Hmm.
basically in the first, day of lockdowns, I was like, I have to close down my company.
Gotcha.
Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It would have been too dangerous for my people. And at the time, we had no idea that they were going to print trillions of dollars, to keep the market afloat.
Yeah.
Um, we're now paying the price for that with inflation and
Yeah.
probably a real estate correction over the next couple of years, as well as the hiking of the interest rates and
Hmm.
everything else. It's just absolute insanity, and it's all a product of 2020, and no one seems to understand that, and it drives me crazy. But setting that aside, uh, so yeah, I decided in the first week to shut down my mortgage company. I was like, well,
Okay.
what else am I going to do? I'm going to speak out. What's the easiest way to speak out? I'm an anonymous account on Twitter, and I have 1,000 followers. I'll just start a show, and I'll stay anonymous, and I'll put it out on my Twitter account and just see if anybody finds it interesting. And then about I was building 6 houses, so I couldn't, and I also owned some property, so I had to.
Okay.
I spent about another year not running my mortgage company, but still living in California, kind of working
Mhm.
on liquidating, other things that I had to become, free again, and
Sure.
then hopped in my car, uh, and drove literally from San Diego down to Miami, and
Wow.
along the way, I hit a bunch of conferences and started to like get my name out there in the libertarian sphere for being a speaker about this type of stuff. And um, yeah, it was a quite a crazy month and a crazy couple years.
Yeah. So, and then I'm guessing that was early mid 2020, or do you remember
No,
the
there's
exact date of
21,
when? 21.
21.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I suppose you had to wait till the king uh let go of some of the lockdowns before he could leave the state, but another
Well,
discussion
I mean,
there.
no, it was really just about all of the investments that I had in California. Like I just
Gotcha.
wanted to be nearby so I can deal with that stuff. And also, I was still tussling with like, can I really leave my friends and family behind? Like
Mm,
it's a tough thing. So
yeah.
those two factors, and then I also had to sell my primary residence. It was like, there was a lot to deal with.
Gotcha.
But a year and a half into the lockdowns, I was like, all right, yeah, this is insane. I got to go.
Yeah. So makes sense. Now, you've kind of alluded to this, but I'm just going to ask for humor's sake, more or less. But going back to your W-2 days with Verizon, but then your days in California, any regrets or anything you miss from either of those situations?
No, I mean, I guess I kind of miss. I don't really miss it, but I guess if I was to say there's one thing that's nice about being an employee is that, once you're clocked out, you're clocked out.
Sure.
And being an entrepreneur, it's like it all matters more to you, and
Hmm.
it sticks with you. You basically are like constantly thinking about what you're doing. But I don't see that as a negative. A lot of people do. I don't see it as a negative simply because, if you're pursuing what you're most passionate about in life, it's not really challenging to be consistently thinking about these things. Like
Mhm.
I love what I do. I couldn't be more passionate about it. So I don't I don't need to clock out.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. So, on the flip side of that, and take us back to 2021 where you drove from California to Florida. What's been the best part of your journey now being an entrepreneur in a freer state, so to speak, of Florida and, doing what you're doing today?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't really explored Miami or Florida very much. I work in, I work from home. I'm here in this place, 99.9% of the time.
Sure.
But I do travel to events and I speak at conventions and things like that. So that's been very cool to meet my audience in person. The fact that I have fans is bizarre. you know, so that's very cool and surreal. But I think probably the coolest part about doing what I've done is that now I'm genuinely friends with a lot of people that I looked up to, and
Gotcha.
I would have considered my heroes. I'm on either first name basis or phone calls here and there with Dave Smith and Scott Horton and Tom Woods and all these other guys that are like
Wow.
to me libertarian icons, and
Hmm.
so that is just I think I'm finally getting to a point of like not feeling out of place, but
Sure.
that for the longest time was just totally surreal.
Wow, very cool. So, no, Clint, for anyone out there that, maybe they see themselves in a similar position, they're stuck in California or one of the non uh, employer investor friendly states, so to speak, or maybe just feel stuck in a W-2 job. Gosh, I have to stay here, for I got a mortgage to pay, I need the health insurance, whatever the
Right.
case may be. What advice would you give to anyone out there listening to this for, taking that first step, getting out of the W-2, getting out of an uncomfortable situation, and really just embracing freedom?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the position of being financially hamstrung and that's why you're keeping the job, well, then you have to remedy that first and foremost. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would never encourage someone to just quit and say, "I'll figure it out." I mean, that is a path, and that's kind of what I did. But
Mm-hmm.
I also had the luxury of having a ton of passive income and a ton of investments that were performing and a ton of assets, and it's like I I probably wouldn't have made the decision I did if I was just paycheck to paycheck, right on the
Right.
line type of deal. So I think that's the first step, is to try and get yourself a little bit more financially free so that you could actually consider what I'm talking about. And
Okay.
then after that, just to, you know, if you have a passion, which I believe most people do,
Mm-hmm.
like you can find a way to monetize it. Like
Right.
you can find a way. So
Mhm.
have faith in yourself and just a belief that like even if you can't see, like if you can see step one but you can't see step two, three, and four, but you have an idea of what step five might be, like two, three, and four will become elucidated to you through that
Right.
journey, as long as you pursue it with your whole being. But
Yep.
you have to be all in. You have to be
Hmm.
completely committed to the process. You have to have a vision and stick to it, and it shouldn't be a challenge. It should be something that you are thrilled to pursue. And if you
Hmm.
have those ingredients, then fucking get after it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss, but
Oh no, you're fine.
I'm like we need more people in the world that are doing that.
Yep.
So I try and instill that courage, faith, whatever in my audience as often as possible. That like we need more people that are in a position to be able to speak their minds, because
Hmm.
working in a corporate world is getting increasingly challenging to have any uh you know countervailing viewpoints.
Yep. Yeah. And well, like you just said, and uh, can't believe the book was Stealth War, and a little bit of a tangent here, but just so with the corporate culture, I remember there was a individual. I think he worked for Hilton or Hampton Inns or something like that. Long story short, he was on the corporate Twitter account. He liked a tweet that recognized Taiwan as a sovereign nation. Obviously,
Yeah.
the Communist Party of China had a little bit of disgruntlement with that. And long story short, because he liked a tweet, he ended up losing his job. And I think it just
Yeah.
goes to show how unsecure pretty much any W-2 job is out there.
Yeah, man. I mean, and Daryl Morey for I think it was either the Houston Rockets or maybe he was with the Sixers at the time, but he ran afoul of the same unwritten rule, saying that we stand with Taiwan, and they were like, yeah, you can't do that. Like
Yep.
The NBA is trying to make $1 billion, by selling merch and stuff in China,
Mhm.
and they're having games over there and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
no, that ain't a go, bro. And he's one of the most genius, analytical minds when it comes to being a general manager in the league, and he was basically ousted. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he was forced to just shut up. And I think,
Yep.
I think he ended up getting fired from that job and getting another one. But anyways, long story short, I mean, yeah, this is what we're up against. Like,
Yep.
it's like we now have not just cultural narratives that you must abide by, but you also have geopolitical narratives, and
Yep.
the pressure that comes with that. I mean, it's insane. It's just totally
Exactly.
insane. And I don't believe that this is a reflection of the American ideals. I think it's totally reprehensible, to be honest, and I think it's completely counter to what I want to see in the world. So
Hmm.
I'm because I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I think it's up to the people to change it, and the only way you're going to change that is to become financially free so that you can speak your mind.
Hmm.
And that's a tough ask of people, but hey, liberty ain't easy.
Exactly. No, I like that. So now as we close this out, and again, I want to thank you for taking the time to call in and share your story with my listeners. But I kind of call this the unscrewed moment. As far as 2023 goes, where can people find you, see what you're doing, and are there any new projects that you're hoping to complete by the end of 2023?
Yeah. So at Liberty Lockpod on Twitter, about to hit 74,000 probably later today. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as far as goals go, my show has far exceeded my expectations in terms of success. So, wherever that goes, I'll be thrilled. But I've actually been talking to Tim Pool about taking on a job with him. So
Okay.
that'll be very interesting if that comes to pass. I don't feel comfortable to disclose anything beyond that, but I think that
Sure.
that's a goal that I didn't even have, but if it were to happen, I think could definitely propel a hardcore liberty message to a far
Hmm.
larger audience, and I think that would be good for the world. So we'll see if it happens, man.
All right, sounds good. Well, yeah, best luck to you with all that. Congrats on your Twitter followers. I think I just broke. I think I'm at 2,300 right now. But Dave
Nice.
Ramsey has blocked me, so I figure that's a win right there. So
Well, hey, I had 2,300, just 2 years ago or so. So
okay,
you just keep after it, man.
you bet. So all right. Well, thanks again, Clint. And for those listening, be sure to check out the Liberty Lockdown podcast. Definitely recommend it, and obviously his message of liberty and freedom. Clint, thanks again for coming on the show and spreading the message.
My pleasure, John.